Charlie Kirk, Public Reaction. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Yesterday, Charlie Kirk, a conservative activist, was assassinated. There has been a considerable public reaction alongside that of the media. And I thought it would be useful to examine that reaction to help you understand more about why people behave the way they do in circumstances where a man has lost his life, leaving behind a widow and 2 small children. You may recall that last year I posted videos about the reactions to when Donald Trump won his second presidency, where a number of individuals felt that it was necessary to go to social media to tell us all about how they felt, with some rather over-the-top reactions. Furthermore, that there were certain women who decided that they were placing themselves on a sex strike as a consequence of people voting for Donald Trump. This goes further. This relates to an individual who has lost his life. And one of the things that I've noticed by way of the reaction, which is considerable across social media, is that a phrase that Charlie Kirk used himself has been thrown back at him in relation to his death again and again and again. There are 2 aspects to the quotation whereby people quote him saying, "I can't stand the word empathy, actually." And then also, "I think empathy is a made-up New Age term, that it does a lot of damage." And therefore, people are suggesting that there is some degree of comeuppance for Charlie Kirk, some karma, if you will, in relation to him suggesting, well, I don't like empathy, and commentators across social media have responded by pointing out, well, I don't have any empathy for you, mate, because you don't like empathy. Now, the starting point with this is to actually put what he said in the appropriate context, because, unsurprisingly, many of those are using it in order to suggest that he's got his just desserts, are taking it out of context. Here is what he actually said during an episode of The Charlie Kirk Show on October the 12th, 2022. "The new communication strategy is not to do what Bill Clinton used to do, where he would say, 'I feel your pain.' Instead, it is to say, 'You're actually not in pain.' So let's just, a little very short clip, Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. 'I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term, that it does a lot of damage. But it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.'" Kirk's remarks were part of a broader discussion about how political messaging has evolved, specifically referencing former US President Bill Clinton's famous "I feel your pain" approach during his 1992 presidential campaign. Kirk contrasted that with what he perceived as a modern democratic strategy of dismissing people's struggles rather than acknowledge them. He argued that empathy as a concept is a made-up New Age term that causes harm, though he acknowledged its effectiveness in political rhetoric. Kirk expressed a preference for the term sympathy over empathy, but did not elaborate further on the distinction during this segment. Naturally, this has resurfaced online, sparking debate about his views, and there are those that have chosen his rejection of, or criticism of, empathy as a rejection of understanding other people's feelings, where in actual fact, what it is, it's a critique of how empathy is weaponized in political discourse. Note that it is the case that he referenced sympathy, which is, when it's genuine, a form of emotional empathy. He also previously tweeted that those who empathise, or rather emphasise empathy, often lack it for certain groups, which is something that I'm going to be touching on in this video. Accordingly, whilst this was the quotation, certain individuals have taken it out of context and the short form of it to basically suggest this is a man who didn't have any emotional empathy, he didn't like the term emotional empathy, and therefore, as a consequence of that, he got his just desserts. It's important to identify that this didn't mean that he had no emotional empathy. On the contrary, he was critiquing how empathy is weaponized in political discourse, and he also made reference to preferring the use of sympathy. Balance, context, and the full quotation is important. There's also been a considerable reaction where there are those that have expressed their horror and their upset and their disgust at what has happened to him. And there's plenty of observations in that vein on social media. But I've chosen to focus on the incidences where people have revelled in his demise for the purposes of looking at this question of emotional empathy and why do people respond in the way that they do. There are a lot of reactions which are ones whereby there appears to be an absence of emotional empathy for Charlie Kirk and those affected by his death, primarily across X and TikTok. Here is a small sample of some of those reactions.
I'm just really glad Charlie Kirk just got himself fucking shot, because he's right. Empathy is dangerous to society. So no one should give a fuck that he's dead. He said it. I'm just saying his words. All I'm doing is using his words. You can't be mad at me for using his words. I think empathy is a new wave thing and is very problematic. You right. No empathy for you. Zero.
Breaking news. Charlie Kirk was in the neck. As of right now, I think his condition is unknown. And there are a lot of people that are like, no matter what side of politics you're on, you should never celebrate something bad happening to someone. I, on the other hand, do cheer when bad things happen to bad people. So on behalf of everybody else, I don't know if he's gonna make a recovery or not. I don't know what his condition is. It just happened as I'm filming this. I saw the video of it happening. I do not feel bad for him in the slightest, and I'm very, very much wondering what MAGA is going to react with. I wonder how they're going to make this about how black people shouldn't be allowed guns, or trans people. They're probably going to blame a trans black person. I don't fuck. But we can all celebrate because something really awful happened to a really, really awful guy. And again, if you're one of those dipshit people that are like, no matter what happens, you should never wish death on someone, I'm gonna cheer and dance and sing. Thank you very much.
Charlie Kirk was a Nazi. He was a Nazi. And you know what kind of Nazi is the best Nazi? A dead one.
I'm not saying she deserved it, but I'm saying God's timing is always right.
Do you support his death?
I do.
You support his death?
Fuck Charlie Kirk.
You support Charlie Kirk being killed?
Yes, I do.
On the day he died, you're here at a vigil for Charlie Kirk and you support his death.
Do you support a Nazi?
No, I don't support a Nazi. Charlie Kirk wasn't a Nazi.
Yes,
You support his shooter?
Yep, sure do. It's freedom.
You support Charlie Kirk's shooter?
Sure do. He did us all a favor.
Would you shoot somebody like Charlie Kirk?
I would have killed him myself.
You would have killed him yourself? Okay. Do you have a job here in Seattle?
Nope. I take that for a look.
Got shot and killed. How do you feel?
Happy. Goodbye.
Wow. Did you see that Charlie Kirk just got shot and killed?
That's good.
Wow. That's good. That's good that people are getting shot just off a political view. Good that people are dying in America.
Did you see that Charlie Kirk got shot and killed today?
Yes, I did.
How do you feel about that?
I don't really have any feelings about it. Who are you?
Charlie Kirk got shot and killed today. We're just getting people's opinions. How do you feel about that?
Girl, someone had to do it. And that's how I feel at this point in time. But
You know, I appreciate your honesty. I truly do. So you said someone had to do it.
yes.
Try not to get all pulled up into that, but he was a misogynist. He was a disgusting person with disgusting beliefs.
So if you had a magical wand, a magical button that you could press and keep him from being assassinated, would you press that?
No. I think things happen for a purpose. And if that's how his life was ended, then that's how it was ended. So.
Now, you know that emotional empathy is a topic that gets aired regularly on my channel because it's something that narcissists and psychopaths do not have, and that other people have to varying degrees. And I regularly talk about how emotional empathy guides the responses of people, how it can be corrupted, how it exists in certain situations and not others, how it isn't a fixed thing, that it ebbs and flows like a tide, and how the absence of emotional empathy affects the behaviour of the narcissist towards other people. There, you have various instances of individuals demonstrating an absence of emotional empathy in relation to Charlie Kirk. Why might that be? Many of those individuals would be what I categorise as normals, meaning they are people that have emotional empathy. They have narcissistic traits, they have empathic traits, but what they don't have is emotional empathy in relation to two circumstances. First of all, they don't have emotional empathy for people that are not particularly known to them, people who are not within their circle of empathy, people outside of their family and friendship group. And Charlie Kirk would well belong to that grouping for certain individuals. That they don't know him, he's not in their lives, and accordingly that produces a reduced emotional empathy response. Now, one point that is worth making is that there are many people who have expressed upset and sympathy, disgust and concern in relation to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who similarly didn't know him. Why is it that those individuals express those views, whereas there are others who do not? Well, if we proceed on the basis that those views are all coming from the normal grouping, meaning all of those in that group do have emotional empathy, why is it that some are exhibiting it towards Charlie Kirk and others are not? This is where the application of an external stressor becomes relevant. For those that express sympathy and upset in relation to what has happened, it is either the case that their views are similar to that of Kirk's, therefore that brings him into the circle of empathy even though they may not know him personally, or if their views don't align, and they may say as such, I didn't like what he had to say, but I still think it's awful that this has happened to him and his family, it is the case that there isn't a sufficient eroder of emotional empathy to cause them to respond in the way that certain other individuals have. Thus, those that express sympathy and upset either have their emotional empathy increased in relation to Kirk, bringing him into the circle of empathy by virtue of an alignment of views and values, or there isn't something which causes their emotional empathy to be eroded to such an extent that would compel them to speak out against him. This then leads us to the group of normals who do speak out against him, who revel in his death, who say he deserved it, that he had it coming, that they are, in effect, pleased that he has died. Those individuals have diminished or no emotional empathy for Charlie Kirk as a consequence of the fact that they didn't like what he had to say, and therefore that eroded their emotional empathy for him. That means that they spoke out in the way that they did. Remember, emotional empathy is like a tide. It ebbs and flows. It's also the case that undoubtedly there will be some people who have commented who are narcissists and have no emotional empathy. Many of them will believe that they have. They'll be unaware mid-range narcissists who think that they have emotional empathy for people, but their actions and behaviours demonstrate that they do not. And that manifests not only in making the comments that they have done so about Charlie Kirk's death, but furthermore, that they think that it is appropriate to utilise his death as a means of going on social media and crowing about it. It's one thing, of course, to think privately to yourself, well, he had what was coming to him, he won't be missed, certainly not by me. But those individuals that go to social media may well be narcissists because they are utilising the demise of another person for the purposes of bringing attention to themselves, in other words, fuel. It's also the case that you need to keep in mind as well that many of the reactions are driven by herd mentality and immaturity. That you could see that in respect of many of the postings, they come from young people who don't really have a lot of experience of life, who have lacked the maturity to find themselves in certain situations. And often, without thinking, there is the external stressor of a herd mentality which erodes their emotional empathy, so they get caught up in the moment. I've read some quite interesting studies about why is it that people get caught up in rioting, for instance, when hitherto they've been law-abiding citizens, and it's not particularly because they are somebody that supports a political school of thought or a cause. They just suddenly find themselves getting swept up in that moment. And it's linked to powerful emotions being experienced alongside the event itself. And therefore, that acts as an external stressor on their emotional empathy, which causes them to engage in physical violence, the destruction of property, and so forth. Similarly, that herd mentality of being swept up in the moment, of joining the cause, which is to go on social media and mock Charlie Kirk's death, is an external stressor again, which reduces that emotional empathy. It is interesting to see the responses of individuals, and also it links to how there is an increasing empathy deficit, something that I've spoken about previously, and an increase in narcissistic behaviours, which is fueled by social media. The fact is, many years ago, 25 or so years ago, you wouldn't have had this response because you wouldn't have been able to place it on social media to influence other people. But now it can happen. That acts as an external stressor. Accordingly, there are those that express sympathy and upset in relation to what has happened to Charlie Kirk because they have emotional empathy by virtue of being an empathic individual themselves. There are others who are normals, who have emotional empathy for Charlie Kirk as a consequence of an alignment of views and values, or that they don't have an external stressor reducing the emotional empathy to the extent that causes them to speak out against him. You then have individuals who simply did not like him because of the views that he expressed, and as a consequence of that, that has reduced their emotional empathy for him to such a degree that they engage in behaviours of saying that they're basically pleased that he's died. You then have narcissistic people who have limited emotional empathy to begin with, who are selfish and self-absorbed, who similarly would speak out in such terms about Charlie Kirk. And then, naturally, you will have some narcissists that are involved. You will have, again, amongst the narcissists and amongst narcissistic individuals and normals, the fact that as a consequence of a herd mentality, for those that in that grouping have some emotional empathy, it's eroded by the herd mentality of getting caught up in the moment and utilizing social media. For the narcissists, going to social media to crow about the death of Charlie Kirk is demonstrative of the absence of emotional empathy. Kirk spoke about emotional empathy in the way that I described at the beginning of this video. Many individuals have sought to throw that in his face. Thereafter, others have taken to social media to crow about his death, exhibiting an absence or a diminution in their own emotional empathy. And it's provided me with a wider opportunity to highlight and explain those actions for you vis-à-vis the concept of empathy. If you want to understand more about emotional empathy and its role in relation to the narcissistic dynamic, I have plenty of videos about the topic, and also you can access the Knowledge Vault, where you can obtain Understanding Emotional Empathy and the Empathy Cake. I'd encourage you to do so to help you understand more about why people behave the way they do, and in particular in circumstances in relation to what has happened to Charlie Kirk. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for watching.